Welcome to A Christian Response with me, Dave Piper, on TWR-UK. In this series, we're taking a look at how Christians are responding to some of the major issues in communities across the UK and around the world. We're finding out what motivates people to stand up for those in poverty, to tackle human trafficking, and to champion those in the latter years of their lives, amongst many other issues. We're speaking to church leaders, charity staff, experts and volunteers to get a grasp of the numerous problems in our communities that can be fixed by prayer, practical action and political intervention. We're taking lessons from Scripture about how we as followers of Christ should respond to those around us. If you'd like to get in touch to share your thoughts on anything you hear this week on the programme, then please do feel free to email us. The email address is studio@twr.org.uk. That's studio@twr.org.uk. We're joined this week on the programme by Samuel Luak, Church Engagement Manager at Welcome Churches. And we're talking today, Samuel, about a Christian response to immigration and asylum in the UK. Now, you work for Welcome Churches. I wonder if you can start by just telling us a little bit about the mission of Welcome Churches and why the organisation actually exists in the first place.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dave, and good to be here. First of all, let me just start by saying that Welcome Churches is a network of churches in the UK. And our mission is to see every refugee being welcomed by a local church in the UK. In other words, we're really looking forward that a church would be existed in a walking distance from anybody who is asylum seeker or a refugee. And this is actually to think about the gap that we have, for example, when we talk about immigration. So we know, for example, that the government provides, basic support and needs for people who arrive here. But the government cannot create a community. That's where the church comes in. And that's why all these churches are united in mission and objective to be able to do that collectively to represent the church in the UK. And that's why we see the network is a huge, symbol of unity among churches, that this movement shows God love in action among people who arrive here as strangers, namely refugees and those seeking asylum.
And you mentioned it's a network across the UK of churches. Is that because actually people who do come here to claim asylum, to seek refugee status, they are actually ending up in all parts of the four nations?
That's right, yeah. So when people arrive to the UK, the Home Office usually spread them to different parts of the UK. So we have refugees and those seeking asylum actually everywhere in the UK, yeah. That's a collective mission of churches in the UK with four nations, yeah.
And presumably some of these people who are coming to our shores are actually Christians themselves. That must make it even more imperative for churches to reach out to them when they do get here.
Exactly, yeah. So when people arrive here, from my experience, working with refugees for the last 20 years, so usually people come, many of them are Christian actually, who just left, their home countries, and they're looking for, beside belonging, they're looking for fellowship, looking for where to belong. So the first question they will ask, is there a church? And this is a big group actually among those who are refugees and seeking asylum. The second group are people who are looking for friendship and belonging. They are not even interested at all to know about Christianity, but they know the church is welcoming, the church is a community, the church exists in the society, and so they come, around the activities, the community that the church creates, And the third group of people are people who have questions, they come and they have genuine questions. And the church is also where you can talk to people, freely, trusting, that they will be good to me, even if you don't know anything about Christianity at all. That's where we see the number of people who come here in this kind of categories. Yeah.
It's interesting you're talking about them seeing the church as somewhere where they can ask questions, because people who are fleeing from their home country because of political issues, because of persecution, because of war, they must have an experience of not being able to trust everyone you meet.
Exactly, yeah. So that's really what happens. I've seen it myself firsthand. Living in 7 countries where there were refugees. I've seen that firsthand. So a few years ago, there was some sort of survey, among asylum seekers. Whom do you trust? So many of them, even non-Christian, they say we trust anybody from the church because we know we can talk to them. We know, for example, that they're good people. In that sense. So there's fear of authorities, and sometimes even around organizations that are supporting refugees. Even using the word officer has been always a problem, officer. And then it comes to this kind of authorities and police and all this. Yeah. So that's what really happening. And we are so glad that, we are trusted even by people who don't know anything about what we believe.
Samuel, what's it like for churches who decide they do want to try and welcome refugees and asylum seekers in their neighbourhood? Because we're talking about people from all different backgrounds, all different countries, in different circumstances. There must be an awful lot of cultural barriers to get over.
That's exactly what's happened. So when people arrive from diverse cultures, so it is a very challenging, work to do for volunteers, for churches. That's why, as Welcome Churches, we provide training, awareness training. We have cross-cultural awareness training. We have trauma-informed training. So this is just to prepare people of what they expect, when they go and support other people. That's why, supporting people who are from another culture is not a joyful thing all the time. There is so much to learn. But the good news is that it is an environment where we can learn not only about ourselves, but also about other people, and that's where it is very interesting. So there is so much learning to do, but because we have organizations like Welcome Churches and other organizations who are preparing people for this, I think that's why it becomes more joyful in that sense. Yeah, we have to prepare people for it.
And is part of this, and maybe Welcome Churches is instrumental in this, is part of this actually getting to know the authorities as well, getting to know the politicians, the officials, those who are making decisions about asylum seekers' lives while they're here in the UK, and actually saying this is who we are, this is the service we can provide.
Exactly, yeah. So as part of this awareness, we talk about, the journey that refugees and those seeking asylum take, for example, and what are the things that we need to learn about it. But also, we talk about, the life in the UK. And let's say, for example, immigration has about 3 dimensions. One of them is a political dimension. There are people here who are politicians who decide, rules and things that need to be done in the country. And this is the right of every country. There are also those who are legal experts, those who are processing the cases for like the Home Office. But also we tell them there are people who are in the community, and the church exists as part of the community, and they do the welcoming. So we just try to help everybody to understand this is what is happening, and that's why everyone has a role to do. And our role is to help you to understand what is going on, even how to live in this part of the world, in this country.
And talking about that side of it then, expectations of how people will live and behave in the UK, expectations of from our side of what these people who've just arrived in our midst will be like. Is that an important discussion as well to have, to bring community cohesion? Because there's an awful lot of fear and worry and concerns on both sides of this debate at the moment.
Yeah, so immigration is a complex issue, and it is debated everywhere in the world, but it is also right for people to have genuine questions, because when you don't know something, you ask, and then people are given the information that they need to have. So what we do actually is a balance of, giving people the right information, preparing the community, but also helping those who come to also know how to live here, how to behave, while they seek asylum, for example, even though we know seeking asylum is a legal right for everybody anywhere, but it's still, people have to know that while you are seeking asylum, while you claim asylum, there are things that you need also to have, because you have to be legally be aware of the concern people have, because they don't know anything about you. Even the Home Office themselves, they have a very difficult job, because they are, faced with so many people. They don't know anything about them. So they have to figure out who are these people, where do they come from, do they have genuine case, and it is just very complex. But when we understand the role of everyone's place, it helps and it brings clarity. Even when it is debated, it is also healthy that people ask questions and people, express their opinions. Yeah.
Samuel, in recent years, we've seen several incidences where governments of various makeups here have provided new routes for people to come to the UK in response to world global events. Does that provide an opportunity for organisations like Welcome Churches? I'm thinking particularly things around community sponsorship and that sort of idea.
Yeah. So one of the things we really join everybody else to pray for is to have legal routes for people to come to the UK or anywhere else, because we are aware of the dangerous, journeys people take, to arrive here. And no one actually wish any human being to take this kind of route. So having legal routes, for example, like community sponsorship, any kind of these things are really good, because they're good for the people who come and also good for the community to be prepared, especially with services and also things to do. But I also have to say that there is so much balance that need to be aware of. And there are so many things to think about. For example, we think about people as human beings first before they are asylum seekers. We think about, for example, how it helps all of us to have a system in place, rules and regulations, for people to come. So legal routes are really the best for me and for all of us, is best way to pray that there will be legal routes for people to come, so that, we don't go through all this trauma of people, crossing seas and rivers and dangerous, journey to come and to arrive here.
I'm aware, Samuel, that when people do come here and are in the asylum system, there can be long waits for their cases to actually be dealt with conclusively. In many ways, you could describe it, I suppose, as their lives being on hold until they've got that final decision from government. As Christians, particularly for fellow Christians who've come to this country, or those who become Christians when they're here, is it important that their spiritual life isn't put on hold at the same time?
Yes. So I think it is really important. First of all, let me say that most of the people, when they come here, they have different expectations. They don't really know what is happening here. Like when they come here, they would think everything will go smoothly, very quickly. And most of them are young people who have also expectations of life. They want to live life. But when they come here, they are stuck in this long wait of, immigration process. And that's why it needs balance, as I said, between empathy for everyone, but also fact, over fear. So that's where the church comes in. While you're waiting for your case to be looked at, for example, these are the things that you do. And we have so many churches and communities across the UK who are providing, let's say, warm spaces for people, language cafe for people, trying to help people to have this social network while they wait for their cases to be accessed by those who are looking after them. So this is really important. That's why the church is really important here. All the local communities are really important here, because this is where even if it takes long, but people have something to do, will not be like, people are stuck in middle of nowhere. They will know there are people here, that the church I can go to, and there are people who can help me. Yeah. So it is really important.
Does it become a challenge for local churches who are engaged in this work, as and when those they've been working alongside are relocated to different areas of the UK?
Yeah. So this is one of the most challenging things. But we have, as Welcome Churches, a referral system where people can refer people to other places. It was very busy because I know one person, for example, who was moved like 6 times in 2 months, 6 times in 2 months to different places. So that person also went through the referral system 6 times. But now there is some sort of stability in a way, because people stay longer. We have seen this longer where they are. it has been quite stable in a way. But it is very challenging because you start to support somebody as a church, suddenly they're moved. And sometimes they're not given warning. It's just like, now you have to move, And then the referral system helps churches to refer the same person where they go. And another church, for example, can pick up from there and continue to support them. That's the best part of the referral system we have, yeah.
You're listening to A Christian Response on TWR-UK with me, Dave Piper. Over the course of this series, we're taking a look at how Christians are responding to some of the major issues in communities across the UK and around the world. We're finding out what motivates Christians to pray and act, and what the Bible teaches us about our duties and responsibilities to those around us. If you'd like to get in touch to share your thoughts on the issues we're covering, then please do feel free to email. The email address is studio@twr.org.uk. That's studio@twr.org.uk. A lot of the conversation in public around these issues is about community cohesion, about social cohesion, about the fears of locals, about the concerns of those in the system. Do you think as Christians we can bring an extra dimension to all of this? Can we talk from what the Bible tells us about how everyone should be living in community and fellowship?
Yeah. So first of all, let me just say that people have genuine concern and questions, and we recognize that, and they deserve answers. That's really something given. So we have to admit that, because when you don't know something, there is always uncertainty, So it is us all to explain what is going on. Now, for us as Christians, we see human beings, first of all, we see the image of God in them first. And that image of God will help us to treat them with dignity. And when we treat them with dignity, then it comes to our own responsibility within this complex system of immigration. So as we see people as human first, with dignity, we love them, we value them, and we provide them with what we call the biblical mandate of us, welcoming everybody, welcoming the stranger, welcoming everybody really. And one of the things I need also to mention is that the church in the UK, local churches, don't only welcome refugees. So the welcome is open first to the local community. Everybody's welcome. All the churches are open, not only doors, but hearts. And then when we welcome the stranger, that's where the biblical mandate comes in. So we are expected as Christian believers, as a church, to welcome people, to love them. And that's where we see sharing God's love in action, And so that's why we say, if there is a legal dimension of immigration, there is political dimension, but there is also kingdom dimension of the immigration, which means for us, we don't see immigration or people being on the move as a burden, but it is an opportunity also to love them, to tell them who we are, and also to get to know us and to get to know them, and the movement of people, is not something new. People move all the time. But this time it just happened that most of them coming this way. But that's where we come in. That's where we talk about, God loves everybody. That's why we talk about God's calling, and why the church exists in the local community to represent God's presence. Every local church family is there to represent God's presence where they are. And that's where we take also to welcoming strangers who are today refugees and those seeking asylum, yeah.
Is it also worth pointing out at this point that not all those who come here seeking asylum or as refugees, even if their claims are said, yes, you have a valid claim to be here, not all of them will stay here for the rest of their lives. They may well end up moving elsewhere or even, in ideal circumstances, being able to go back to their home country. And if that is the case, should we see that as an opportunity for the Christians involved in that to actually take the gospel back to other parts of the world?
Exactly. That's really one of the things we look for. So if I can say, for example, that the church is here to build bridges, between those who come here, between the local community and the churches, and then we provide this practical support, but also long-term plan. And it's really important because nobody from the people I know is come here to be for life. People also expect that when things are okay, they can go back home. I can tell you about, for example, Sudanese community. When there was war in Sudan, so many people came here. Now, when South Sudan, for example, became an independent country, 90% of the people went back home. And now, if you go to South Sudan, there is what we call British community, who are South Sudanese, who are actually ambassadors, of this country, telling everybody about the good things about this country. So, yeah, the expectation is that they will come here, they will go back as missionaries, but also living witnesses of what God is doing here and also what kind of a community here. That's why when we receive anybody, even one day, it is important because they will be living witnesses of who we are and what we believe and what we share as values.
You're listening to A Christian Response on TWR-UK with me, Dave Piper. Over the course of this series, we're taking a look at how Christians are responding to some of the major issues in communities across the UK and around the world. We're finding out what motivates Christians to pray and act, and what the Bible teaches us about our duties and responsibilities to those around us. If you'd like to get in touch to share your thoughts on the issues we're covering, then please do feel free to email. The email address is studio@twr.org.uk. That's studio@twr.org.uk.
Do you think, Samuel, that we can actually learn from some of these people coming to the UK ourselves? We're very aware that those fleeing from places where Christianity is persecuted may have a much more urgent experience of their faith than we maybe do have here in the UK.
Yeah. So when people come here, especially when people come through this trauma of being persecuted, being mistreated, so the hope is that when they come here, they would be able to get healing, and also recover and also rebuild their lives again, whatever happened with them. So it is really a good opportunity for us to learn. So many years ago, the church in this part of the world sent so many missionaries to different parts of the world. But today, we have people coming here, and this is a chance for us to learn. So when the first missionaries went to different parts of the world, they went there to learn the language and the culture of the people, and they managed actually to help, for example, translating, Bible and all this. But now people are coming here, so it is a chance for us to also learn from them as they learn from us. So it is a learning exchange, which we really need to take advantage of and learn about the world from our towns and cities in the UK.
And can that be something as simple as just beginning to see the world through a different perspective? Because we can almost be blind to the fact that we just see the world through the eyes of someone who's been born and brought up in the UK, and there are other ways of seeing it.
Yeah, so the world is bigger than our own context, So whenever we go somewhere, we learn something new about the world. For example, myself, living in so many countries, I have seen things, and I would say always I am a living witness, of what I have seen. I've learned a lot, from people I've met on the way. And so there is so much to learn, but sometimes when we lock ourselves into our own world, we are not aware of what is going on. For example, if we don't hear the news of what is going on in other parts of the world, we are very limited. But today, we have a chance to learn from so many people who are here. And I was checking, people who come here, the majority come to study, to learn from the heritage, the knowledge that we have here. But also some people come to work here. And so we have so many things to learn from those who come here as they learn also from us as well.
And do you think that we can learn from other countries around the world about how best to deal with people coming to this country? Because again, we can see the options we've tried here in the UK and maybe potentially forget other options that other nations have tried.
Yeah. So one of the things, let's say even the Christian values that we share, all of us, are done differently. For example, if we think about hospitality, it is done differently in every culture, in every contact where you go to. And we have so much to learn from this, from other people. The value of togetherness, of the community. It is a Christian value, by the way, that we are a family, we are in fellowship, and this is what God wants us to be, a big family, and these are the things that we can learn from other cultures. And also, they have so many things to learn from us, and so, for example, the value of hospitality, as I mentioned, the value of, collectiveness, against being individual, for example. And one of the things I realized, for example, being in so many churches recently, is that, so you see the songs that we sing, some of the songs are I, but in some other culture, it is we and us. And that's where, we come in and we learn also other things that we can say I, but also we can say we and us as well.
Samuel, just finally, as we talk about welcoming people into our churches, you mentioned earlier, from the entire community, including those who come here as asylum seekers or refugees, is it important that when these issues crop up in the news, as they do week in, week out, that we remember to actually pray for our communities and our churches?
Exactly. I think prayer is actually one of the things that we can do, all of us together. And recently, we, as Welcome Churches, we have been praying for nations. We have been praying for authorities and for people who are handling, the immigration system. For example, the Home Office and everybody else. Prayer is the thing that we have. We can pray from here and we reach the world. So we can reach the world from our devices, from our rooms, into the world. So prayer is something. The other thing which is really important as we pray, we also build bridges. We bring understanding. We bring clarity. So, as I said, asking genuine questions is really good, but it has to be with the mindset of want to understand, not to create division, not to from a point of hatred or anything, or racism or any way, but it's just people to understand. So we can we can bring peace through prayer. We bring justice through prayer. We can also bring compassion through prayer, and we build bridges. And we know when we pray, God intervenes. And as we pray, we also see people, from the image of God's perspective, as well as people who have dignity, whoever they are and whatever they do. So prayer is the master key that we have, and we can all the time come to God in prayer.
Samuel Luak from Welcome Churches, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
And that's all we got time for on this week's episode of A Christian Response. I'm Dave Piper, and it's been a pleasure to have your company over the past half hour as we've taken a closer look at how Christians are responding and can respond to the major issues in life, whether that's in our own towns and cities, across the nations of the UK, or even reaching out into the wider world. If you'd like to get in touch to share your thoughts on the issues we're discussing, then please do feel free to email. The email address is studio@twr.org.uk. That's studio@twr.org.uk. And you can stream or download this week's episode now in full at the website. Just go to twr.org.uk/on-demand and search for A Christian Response.
This podcast is a production of Transworld Radio UK. For more information, go to our website at twr.org.uk.